Most of us spend our lives chasing brilliance. We're always trying to figure out how to be the smartest person in the room. But what if the real secret to success, the real key, isn't about being smart at all? What if it's about systematically avoiding being stupid? Well, that was the core philosophy of Charlie Munger, the absolute legend behind Berkshire Hathaway. And it all kicks off with this really strange question he used to ask.
So Munger was known for posing this very odd question. He'd say, all I want to know is where I'm going to die. And you just have to pause there. I mean, it's a bizarre, almost morbid thought, right? What on earth could he have possibly meant by that?
And there it is. That's the punchline. Tell me where I'm going to die, so I never go there. But this wasn't just a clever joke. For Munger, this was a fundamental survival strategy. It was a mental tool he used to navigate everything. Life, investing, you name it. And to really get where this came from, we have to look at the immense hardship that literally forged his mind.
Munger's worldview, his whole approach, it wasn't born in some comfortable, easy life. It was forged in the fires of just unimaginable personal tragedy. And this is where he developed something he called the iron prescription. Think about this. In 1953, when he was just 29, his son Teddy was diagnosed with leukemia. There was no cure, no insurance to cover it. Munger would visit him in the hospital every single day, and then he'd just walk the streets of Pasadena, crying, terrified he was losing his mind. And then, years later, a botched surgery cost him his eye. His response? He was just glad it happened when he was older.
So here's the crucial part. This is how Munger developed the iron prescription. When you're faced with something absolutely terrible, you don't just endure it, you don't just survive it, you use it. You force yourself to learn from it, to make it fuel. And this stoicism, this resilience, it became the absolute bedrock for his unique way of thinking.
And that unique way of thinking, this whole idea of learning what to avoid, it eventually crystallized into his most powerful mental model, inversion. And he first started using this tool in a very, very high-stakes environment, keeping pilots alive during World War II.
Okay, so what's so interesting about this slide is the contrast. It's night and day. See, most of us, we think forward. We ask, how do I succeed? Or how can I have a happy marriage? Munger flipped it completely on its head. He'd ask, what would guarantee my failure? Or what would make a marriage absolutely miserable? By figuring those things out first and then just avoiding them, you dramatically improve your chances of success. It's that simple.
So let's look at this in action. As a meteorologist in the war, his job wasn't about finding the perfect sunny day to fly. No, his job was to keep pilots from dying. So he inverted the problem. Instead of asking, how do we get there safely, he asked, what are all the things that could kill these guys? Ice on the wings, bad winds, engine trouble. He made a checklist of all the negatives and just made damn sure they were all avoided.
And Munger wasn't just making this stuff up. He was a huge admirer of this 19th century algebraist Carl Jacobi, who famously said, invert, always invert. Munger understood that a lot of really hard problems actually become pretty simple when you just turn them upside down. And that became his mantra.
Of course, if it were that easy, well, everyone would be doing it. The biggest obstacle to using inversion isn't how complex the problem is. It's the complexity of our own minds. Our brains, it turns out, are just wired with these cognitive biases that actively work against clear, rational thought.
Munger actually coined a term for when these biases team up against you. He called it a Lollapalooza effect. Just picture an auction, right? You've got social proof kicking in. Everyone else is bidding, so it must be valuable. Then you've got commitment bias. You've already bid once, you can't stop now. And then the fear of losing kicks in. All these biases combined, and bam! Suddenly you've paid 10 times what something is actually worth. That's a Lollapalooza.
Let's look at a classic case study Munger just loved to share. For years, FedEx had this huge problem at their main hub. No matter what they tried, pep talks, threats, more training, they just could not get the night shift workers to sort packages fast enough to get the planes out on time. It was costing them a fortune. All these super smart executives just kept missing the answer because they weren't thinking about the single most powerful force in human behavior: incentives. You have to listen to Munger on this because it's a rule for life. He said, never ever think about something else when you should be thinking about the power of incentives. People will almost always do what they're paid to do.
And this just illustrates the solution so beautifully. See, the workers were being paid by the hour. So what was their incentive? To work slower to get more hours. So FedEx made one simple change. They started paying them per shift. As soon as all the planes were loaded, they could go home,
with a full night's pay. The result? It was immediate. It was astounding. This problem that had plagued the company for years just disappeared in a single night. Once the incentives were aligned with the goal, human nature just took care of the rest.
So, how do we do this? How do we cultivate this kind of wisdom? How do we learn to see those invisible incentives and start inverting problems in our own lives? Well, for Munger, the path was clear, and it didn't require some genius-level IQ. It required books.
His statement on this is just completely unambiguous. There's no gray area. I have known no wise people who didn't read all the time. None. Zero. He really believed that wisdom wasn't something you were born with. It's something you acquire through relentless, vicarious learning.
So what this all boils down to is Munger's simple path. He'd say, make friends with the eminent dead. Read the biographies of giants like Ben Franklin or Charles Darwin. Absorb their lessons, their mistakes, their ways of thinking. His one simple rule for life was just to go to bed every night a little wiser than you were when you woke up.
You know, through his writings and his talks, Charlie Munger kind of inverted the problem of death itself. He left his mind on the page for all of us to learn from. He drew the map, showing exactly where the disasters and the stupidities lie. The only question left is, are you brave enough to pick it up and read it?